In major Canadian cities, we've all been conditioned to believe the same story. When supply tightens, prices rise, and everyone panics. And most of the time, that story's true, which is exactly why what's happening right now is so strange. In British Columbia, rents are falling, vacancies are hitting 30-year highs, and home prices are expected to drop. On the surface, it sounds like the housing crisis is finally easing, like maybe we've turned a corner. But if you look just one layer deeper, you realize this might be one of the most dangerous points in the entire housing cycle. Because while renters are getting relief today, the system that produces housing for tomorrow is quietly breaking down in the background. And that's exactly what I'm going to unpack in this video, including how the complete mess known as Metro Vancouver is making this situation even worse. Before we go any further, if you care about affordability, housing, or where the Vancouver market is heading, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I follow the data even when it contradicts headlines. So let's start with what looks like the good news. I've been looking at the latest rental data from rentals.ca, and for the first time in what feels like forever, the arrows are pointing down. Year over year, rents in BC are down 5.8%. That is a meaningful correction. In rental markets, you typically see changes of 1 to 2%. Nearly 6% is real money. And when you zoom in even further, it gets more dramatic. Coquitlam is down over 10%, and North Vancouver is down nearly 8%. Even the city of Vancouver is down close to 5%. For anyone who's been told for years that rents only go up, this might feel like a glitch in the simulation. It's not just pricing either. Availability has changed. For years, the story was zero vacancy. You would show up to a rental showing and there would be a line around the block. Now, Vancouver's vacancy rate has hit 3.7%, which is a 30-year high. And Victoria is also at a 25-year high. The provincial housing minister, Christine Boyle, has even been quoted saying that the days of 100 people lining up for one apartment are over. The province is definitely taking a victory lap on this one, but let's be real here. This softening has almost nothing to do with provincial housing policy. Governments love to claim credit for outcomes they didn't cause, especially when the timing is convenient. So if it wasn't policy, what actually caused this? It's a perfect storm of multiple factors all hitting at once. On the demand side, there's been a significant decline in international students following federal immigration changes. That alone takes massive pressure off the entry-level rental market almost immediately. Fewer people competing for studios or basement suites. On the supply side, we're finally seeing completions of projects that were started years ago. This is a lagging indicator. A high-rise takes 4 or 5 years to build, and on average in Vancouver, it takes around 7. The supply coming online today was planned back in 2021 and 2022, back when money was cheap and confidence was high. So what we're seeing now isn't some new system working. It's the output of decisions made half a decade ago. But here's where the narrative twists. While renters are feeling relief, the people who actually build and operate housing are looking at the math, and the math is breaking. A softening market is great for consumers today, but it sends a very clear signal to developers to stop building for tomorrow. And that brings us right into the construction numbers. According to CMHC, Canadian housing starts actually increased in 2025. They were up 5.6% to about 259,000 units. If you just looked at that headline, you'd think construction is booming. But CMHC has been crystal clear. To restore affordability, Canada needs to build between 430,000 and 480,000 homes every single year. So yes, starts are up, but if this is a marathon, we're running at half the pace we need to finish the race. And that national number hides something far more worrying. There's a massive geographic shift. Calgary, Edmonton, and Montreal are booming. Montreal housing starts were up nearly 60%, but the most expensive supply-constrained markets are slowing down. Toronto housing starts dropped over 30%, and Vancouver dropped 3%. The biggest engines of the Canadian housing market are stalling. And CMHC data shows something else that's critical. Developers didn't stop building entirely. They changed what they were building. Because of economic uncertainty, trade tensions with the US, and unresolved Indigenous land claims, developers pulled back from big, slow, capital-intensive projects like concrete condos. Those projects take years, require massive financing, and rely heavily on materials like steel, and concrete that are extremely sensitive to tariffs and volatility. Instead, developers pivoted to small and fast townhouses, multiplexes, and wood frame construction, which are easier to finance, quicker to build, and less risky. That pivot is what propped up the housing starts in 2025. But here's the problem. You cannot solve the housing crisis in Vancouver or Toronto with multiplexes alone. By the end of the year, even that momentum was fading. And we're starting to see some municipalities push back against multiplex zoning completely. So as we head into 2026, the big, slow projects are on hold and the small, fast projects are running out of steam. Which brings us to the real question. Why are developers pulling back so aggressively? This is where we hit the profitability wall. David Hutniak from Landlord BC has been warning about a growing disconnect. The equation is simple. Rental revenue is falling, but operating costs are exploding. Property taxes, insurance, maintenance, mandatory energy upgrades, all going up. So income goes down while expenses go up. If purpose-built rentals aren't profitable, construction doesn't slow, it stops. Just because it's a rental building doesn't mean it's a charity. It's a business. If it costs more to operate a building than you earn in rent, you don't build the building. And that brings us right into the absolute mess at Metro Vancouver. Metro Vancouver is the regional authority responsible for things like water and sewage infrastructure. And they're proposing to hike development charges
by 200%.
Right now, they charge about $6,200 per unit, and they want to raise that to over $20,000 per unit. That fee doesn't just come out of thin air. It gets baked into the cost of housing, or the project simply becomes unviable and gets canceled. Major developers like Polygon, Anthem, and West Group have written letters calling this a market killer. But the anger isn't just about the money, it's about the trust. Developers are openly questioning if Metro Vancouver can even manage the funds responsibly. Zentera Developments called the situation an egregious joke, and a Deloitte review cited a culture of heightened mistrust. Metro Vancouver has recently had top executives terminated or placed on leave. The CAO is also facing suspension motions, and then there's the North Shore wastewater treatment plant. The project's budget exploded from $700 million to over $3.8 billion. Billions over budget. So developers are asking the very uncomfortable question. Are you hiking fees on new homes to pay for your own mismanagement? Why should a first-time homebuyer in 2027 pay an extra $14,000 because Metro Vancouver couldn't manage a project in 2024? One finance committee member even resigned because she couldn't get any straight answers. This all ties into a bigger philosophical debate. The idea that growth should pay for growth. On paper, it sounds fair. Existing taxpayers shouldn't subsidize infrastructure for new residents. Make the developer pay. But here's the problem. If the fees are so high that the projects don't make financial sense, the projects get canceled. And when projects get canceled, you don't get growth, you don't get any fees, and you don't get any housing. You get rid of the goose that lays the golden egg. This isn't theoretical either. Anthem Properties alone has paused or canceled roughly 5,000 planned homes. 5,000 homes that were supposed to exist in the late 2020s simply won't. And this is where renters today might say, who cares? Rents are falling. But we have to be honest about the baseline. Even after these drops, BC still has the highest average rent in Canada at roughly $2,400 a month. That's nearly $29,000 a year. Rents were already completely out of sync with wages. A 5% drop doesn't fix a system that was 50% too expensive to begin with. So where does that leave us? The government says it's staying the course, while the industry is screaming to change direction. Looking ahead, here's the real potential danger. If interest rates have bottomed out and buyers return in late 2026 or 2027, they'll be buying from today's Goldilocks inventory. And I say that because the data we have right now says that we're in a balanced market. Not too hot, not too cold. But if builders stop building today, what happens in late 2027 or 2028 when that inventory dries up? We're right back to 2019. Prices up, supply down. We are enjoying the supply created by decisions made 5 years ago while failing to plant seeds for the supply that we'll need in 3 to 5 years from now. The headlines about falling rents are lagging indicators. indicators. The headlines about stalled construction are leading indicators. Don't be fooled by the for rent signs you see today. Be worried about the construction cranes you don't see. We all want and need infrastructure. Clean water, functional cities, that part isn't controversial. The real question is who should pay for it? Existing residents through property taxes or new residents through higher rents and home prices? Growth paying for growth versus a shared burden. Let me know what you think in the comments below, because how we answer that question may decide whether today's relief is real or just a calm before the next crisis.